If your plants keep dying, here's the thing. It might not be you. It might just be the plants. Some crops survive missed waterings, busy weeks, even total neglect. Kind of wild, right? And one of them can keep feeding you every single spring for up to 2 decades from a single planting. Today we're counting down 15 low-maintenance vegetables that grow even when life gets in the way. Stay until number 1. That one's a little different. But before we get into it, I want to clear something up, because the phrase low maintenance gets thrown around a lot, and I've gone through a lot of sources to figure out what it actually means. Here's what the gardening community keeps coming back to. A truly forgiving plant does 4 things. It survives your mistakes, bounces back fast after a missed watering, keeps producing from a single planting, and shrugs off heat, cold, and drought without much help from you. Every plant on this list has at least one of those qualities. The best ones have all 4. And the list gets easier as we go, until we reach a crop near the top that literally plants itself. At number 15, green onions. And this one you can start tonight. The next time you buy green onions, don't toss the white root ends. Just stand them in a glass of water on a windowsill. Within 7 to 10 days, you've got usable green onions again, through several cycles before they even need soil. They grow straight up, so a container just 6 inches deep is enough for a steady supply. And they bounce back fast from the missed watering. Picture cutting them on Monday, forgetting about them all week, and still seeing new shoots by Friday. That right there. That's why green onions open this list. You can start tonight from scraps you are about to throw away. Number 14, bush beans. And the name tells you everything you need to know. Forget the poles. The netting, the trellises, that's pole beans. Bush beans stay low, hold themselves up, and need nothing built, nothing tied. Plant the seeds, and the plant does the rest. A container 12 inches deep with 6 hours of sun gives a solid harvest in just 50 to 60 days. All the productivity of beans, none of the construction. Simple as that. Number 13, Swiss chard. And this one is tougher than it looks. Summer heat that makes other greens bolt and turn bitter, Swiss chard just shrugs it off. Cool weather? Same thing. It keeps going either way. Here's the trick though. You harvest only the outer leaves. Leave the center alone and the plant keeps coming back. One planting in a container 8 inches deep can feed you from late spring all the way into fall first harvest around 50 to 60 days. It's really up to you how much you take, a little or a lot. The center keeps growing either way. Number 12, kale. One of the hardiest vegetables you can grow. And here's something the gardening community keeps pointing out. A light frost actually makes kale sweeter. The cold converts the starches into sugars, so a chilly night isn't a setback. It's basically free flavor. Like chard, it's cut and come again. Harvest the outer leaves, leave the center alone, and it keeps producing. Container 8 to 10 inches deep, first harvest in 55 to 65 days. A cold night is one of the few things that actually improves it. Not many vegetables can say that. Number 11, okra. The plant built for a brutal summer. While everything else in the garden is wilting in a heat wave, okra speeds up. I mean, it genuinely thrives when other plants are giving up. Deep roots make it drought tolerant. And here's the thing, every pod you pick signals the plant to make more. The more you harvest, the more it gives. Full sun, a bit of warmth, and it starts producing in 50 to 65 days. If your summers run hot, okra is kind of hard to beat. Now, those first 5 forgive almost anything. But the next group goes further. These are the crops that survive the hardest conditions, intense heat, long dry spells, the kind of neglect that ends most gardens. One of them produces so much from a single plant, you may end up giving bags of it away. Number 10. Malabar spinach. And here's the thing, it's not actually spinach. You'll hear it called spinach all the time. That's just not the full picture. Here's why it matters. Regular spinach bolts the moment it gets hot, goes bitter, shuts down. Done. Malabar spinach does the opposite. It's a climbing vine that thrives in heat and humidity and keeps making thick, tender leaves for months. It climbs a trellis or a railing, so it barely takes up ground space. Full sun to partial shade, first leaves in 50 to 70 days. Don't overthink the setup. A fence rail works just fine. When ordinary spinach quits in the heat, this one is just getting started. Number 9. Cherry tomatoes. And here's the thing. Not all tomatoes are created equal. Big slicing tomatoes crack, split, and catch diseases after months of waiting. I mean, you put in all that work and something goes wrong right at the end. Cherry tomatoes are a completely different story. They ripen faster, resist most of that, and a single plant in a container can give you well over 100 tomatoes in one season. One plant, over 100 tomatoes, almost no fuss. That right there is why cherry tomatoes made this list over every other tomato. Use at least a 5-gallon container with 8 hours of sun. They start producing in 60 to 70 days and just keep going from there. Number 8. Sweet potatoes. And this one kind of does two jobs at once. Here's what most people don't realize. The vines spread fast and form a living canopy over the soil. So while you're out living your life, sweet potato is quietly shading out weeds before they even get started. The plant handles much of its own weeding. Most vegetables expect you to do that work. This one takes care of it for you. Deep roots make it genuinely drought tolerant. And you get 2 harvests from one planting. The roots calorie rich and store well, and the young leaves, which are edible too. Grow it in a large container or grow bag in full sun. It takes 90 to 120 days, which is on the longer side, but it asks for almost nothing along the way. There's no rush with this one. It just quietly gets to work. Number 7. Collard greens. One of the most resilient leafy greens there is, and honestly, a lot of people underestimate it. Heat handles it. Cold handles that too. Pests, it resists them far better than lettuce. You'll hear people say collards are fussy. That's just not true. They're one of the toughest greens you can grow, and most of the gardening community that's been growing them long-term will tell you the same thing. Harvest the lower outer leaves, leave the center, and they keep producing. Container 8 to 10 inches deep, full sun. First harvest in 60 to 75 days. Nice and steady, no drama. Number 6. Zucchini. And it's famous for exactly one thing: generosity. I mean, a single healthy plant can produce 20 to 40 fruits in a season. That is way more than most households can even eat. It needs sun, water, and room to spread out. And after that, it mostly just takes care of itself. The real job isn't growing it. The real job is just keeping up with the harvest. 5-gallon container, full sun, first fruit in about 45 to 55 days or so. Now, everything we've talked about so far is low maintenance. But the top 5 are completely different. These are crops you plant once and harvest from for years. The difference comes down to one word: permanence. Most vegetables are annuals, finished when the season ends. So next year, you're starting all over again. But these guys are perennials and self-spreading crops. Establish them once, and they just keep going. One of them genuinely prefers to be neglected. One returns every spring on its own. One literally plants itself. And number one. That one can feed you for up to 2 decades from a single bed. Number 5. Rosemary. And this one kind of breaks all the usual rules. It's a Mediterranean herb from dry, rocky hillsides. So here's the thing. It actually prefers drought-like conditions and poor soil. The most common way people kill rosemary isn't neglect. It's overwatering. You'll hear that herbs need constant attention. That's just not true here. In Zone 7 and warmer, it's a perennial that lives for years. Give it full sun and well-draining soil. Then, honestly, just leave it alone and harvest sprigs when you need them. Rosemary doesn't just tolerate neglect. It prefers it. That right there, that's the ultimate low-maintenance plant. Number 4. Mint. This is the one that's almost impossible to fail with. It grows fast, spreads readily, and bounces back instantly from a cutting or a missed watering. But here's a quick warning. It spreads through underground runners, and it will absolutely take over a bed. So do yourself a favor. Grow it in a container. The pot walls keep it contained, and that's all you really need. 8 to 10 inches deep, partial shade is totally fine. And one plant supplies you all season. If gardening has beaten you before, mint is the one that finally gives you a win. Plant it, ignore it, have some fun. Number 3, garlic chives. A seriously hardy perennial. Plant them once and they come back on their own every spring. No replanting, no starting over. The flavor is this mild, gentle garlic, and you can cut the leaves again and again while the plant keeps right on regrowing. Full sun to partial shade, and they adapt easily to containers. Doesn't have to be fancy. Once they're established, they really do just take care of themselves. Plant once, harvest forever. No worries. Number 2. Egyptian walking onions. Literally, the crop that plants itself. Here's how it works. Instead of one bulb underground, they grow clusters of small bulbs right at the top of their stalks. As those clusters get heavy, the stalks bend down, the bulbs touch the soil, take root, and become brand new plants. That's why they're said to walk across the garden. They expand your patch with no seeding and no replanting. Full sun, very forgiving, and every single part is edible, top to bottom. And at number 1, asparagus. The ultimate low-maintenance perennial. Now, it does ask for one thing the others don't. Patience at the start. You don't harvest for the first 2 to 3 years while it builds a deep root system. But here's the payoff. Once that bed is established, it produces every single spring for 15 to 20 years from one planting. No replanting, no starting over. The spears just come up on their own. Averaged out, it might just be the lowest maintenance food crop you can grow. Give it full sun and a deep bed where it can stay undisturbed, and it pays you back for 2 decades. Plant it, wait a bit, and let it do its thing. 15 plants. And here's the thing. Not one of them needs you to be a perfect gardener. The thread connecting all of them is the same. Good gardening isn't about working harder. It's not about having more time or being born with a green thumb. It's just about choosing crops that forgive your mistakes and survive your busiest weeks. You don't need more time to grow your own food. You just need the right plants. And now you know exactly which ones to start with. If you've ever killed a plant and thought gardening just wasn't for you, drop the word START in the comments. Let's see how many of us are ready to try again this time with the right plants. And subscribe for more practical guides built around a garden that actually fits your life. See you in the next one.